If you're thinking about buying, selling, or investing in property, you are most certainly in the right place. I'm your host, Cornelius Koopman, and welcome to All About Property. If you want to make lots of money with property investing, you've got to stick to a strategy. But before you decide on a strategy, there are a couple of rules to consider. And to shed light on these rules, I'm now joined by property investment experts and mentors, Leroy and Dunisani Manganye. Leroy, Dunisani, welcome to All About Property.
Thank you, Cornelius. How are you?
Good to have you.
Thank you very much, Cornelius, for inviting us. It's good to be here.
Now, Leroy, let's start with you. We all know that if you want to be successful in property investing, you've got to follow a strategy. You can't just blindly invest in property. Why is a strategy so important for your overall wealth objectives?
Look, I think, good question. I think firstly, Cornelius, what happens is, look, I think firstly you need a life plan. And then that plan is going to determine which property strategy you're going to use to get yourself to your main goals.
Talk to us about this life plan that you refer to.
So basically what you want to achieve, where you want to be 5 years, a family goal, whatever it is, or right, a financial goal, freedom goal, and then the strategy will determine which strategy you use to get there. And your strategy basically is determined by your experience and by the capital that you have as well, right?
So for example, if you have lots of debt and you want to get out of debt quickly, would you choose property flips as a strategy, just so they have lump sums and pay off that debt?
Yes, so some people will say, listen, I want to pay off some debt. Let me get initially into buying and selling, which we call flips. Some people will say, listen, I want some cash flow as an additional income, and they'll get into buy to let positive cash flowing properties.
Dunisani, now there are a couple of rules that you need to consider before you can actually decide on a strategy. And as Leroy said, a strategy that will get you to your life goals. Let's unpack these rules. The first rule I want us to talk about is you need to consider your target yield.
Well, Cornelius, the target yield basically just gives you it's kind of like an indicator to give you an indication whether a certain property that you buy, whether it's going to give you a positive income or not in terms of the cash flow. For example, in terms of the gross yield, let's talk about gross yield, because the target yield, it assigned to either a gross yield or a net yield. So in most cases, what we tell our students is to make sure that when they invest in property, they need to make sure that any property that they invest into needs to at least give them a minimum of 15% gross yield. By getting a minimum of 50%, you are sure that the cash flow that you're going to make is positive, because anything below, I can guarantee you it's going to be a negative cash flow, and that's not why you want to invest. You want to invest to make money.
The type of properties that you invest in will probably also play a role in the returns that you're hoping for. Talk to us about that.
Risk will determine the return that you want to get, and also it will determine what sort of a property you want to buy. For example, properties, if you want to use a strategy where you're going to collect, such as your student accommodation, where you get a lot of income in terms of return on investment, but the risk there is higher. You need to assume that as well. But for beginners, for people who are risk averse, in most cases, we always say start with buy to let. I always tell my students buy to let is the risk averse strategy. So the most important,
just for clarity for our people, buy to lets are?
Buy to let is just to buy a townhouse in a complex, in a sectional area, where you're not concerned about the outside of the building, you're only concerned about the inside. So you don't have to worry about who take care of that complex. So it's buying a property in a sectional title scheme, basically. That's what buy-to-let in most cases are. It's for single dwelling, basically, if I can explain it in that simple term.
Now, why did you say a student accommodation would be a higher risk?
Remember, in terms of student accommodation, you need to take care of everything. In terms of students, sometimes students, they don't take care of your property. And students, in most cases, you know, it's all about fun when it comes to students. You need to manage them very well. But if you can't manage them very well, it means that you'll end up spending more in terms of maintaining that property. That is why it's high risk.
Okay.
And at the same time, you're going to have a lot of students frequenting depending if you've got a solid contract. But students in most cases, they're always looking for a better place. And I've experienced that a lot. You know, in terms of student accommodation, it's kind of like high risk. But in terms of what you're collecting every month, I'm telling you, it's amazing. So it all depends on what you want. And more importantly, you need to look at the area where you're investing. A student accommodation will never work everywhere. There are certain areas where you can actually do it using that type of strategy.
Now, on that note, Leroy, your location of your property and your type of tenant obviously also plays a huge role in the strategy that you're going to follow. Talk to us about that.
So for whatever strategy you want to follow, you need to make sure that there's demand. For example, you said student accommodation, it's location specific. It has to be close to a tertiary institution. If you're looking at let's say
Flip, for instance.
Flip, you need to either look at an older area where most of the properties are paid down, right? Because you want to get it at a discount. So you can't go to a place, let's say like Greenstone, where all the properties are new. The bonds are high, so which means, and it's young people, which means most of them still have high bonds, which means it's difficult to get a discount.
Okay.
So you look at your older areas, your older suburbs. I like the below $1 million. Some people below 1.5 because you always have turnaround in that.
There's more buyers in that
There's more
market.
buyers in there. We always say there's buy properties that the average person can afford to buy and that the average person can afford to rent. So older area for flips, properties are paid down, still a good area, there's demand. So if you buy it and you want to flip it, you want to sit with it for a year or two, right? Because then you're not making money. So you want to get it in. Always you try for a back-to-back, which is you buy it and you sell it simultaneous transfer. Not always possible, but you want to at least sell it in, say, 6 months.
Now, just in closing, Dunisani, how do you analyze a deal just to make sure that it will meet your strategy objectives?
Well, to analyze the deal, you need to do your numbers, Cornelius. You need to know the area where you're investing. You need to know why you want to buy that property. In most cases, how you analyze the deal, you look at what you want to make in that property. First, you run the numbers. Running the numbers is important, meaning that you need to know how much you're going to spend on your transfer cost, on your rates and taxes, on your levies if you're buying within an estate. Then once you've got all that information, you will also need, I always say to my students, take into account the area where you're buying. Is that area fast moving or is it a slow moving? For example, if you want to use a capital flip, there's no point in you buying a property where the last property in that suburb was sold maybe 6 months it was sold 6 months back. There's no point. There's no way there will be a faster movement. So you need to analyze. You need to know whether that place where you want to invest in is a fast-moving area, whereby properties have been sold maybe last month. That's basically where I will consider to do my capital flip, because I will know that I will never stay with a property for longer than 6 months. That's the time frame that I personally and what we share with our students to give themselves. So we know that there will be a faster move when they invest in that strategy. So it's always important to consider the area, do area analysis, make sure that for the strategy that you want to use, that strategy is going to work within that area.
And I suppose for every strategy, you run a different set of numbers. You look at different things with regards to the area, with regards to your buyer or your tenant. So I think just to close off here, I think it all boils down to get yourself educated before you venture into property investment.
100%. We agree fully with you, Cornelius. Education, you need to invest in yourself. If you don't invest in yourself, you'll pay the high school fees. School fees is always paid, whether you pay it now. If you don't pay it now, you'll pay it later.
But then just to add to that, so I think get the education, but then go out and take action.
Go out and take action.
You find people,
very important.
They overanalyze things for years and they've never bought. Go out, get the basic education and then go out. That's how you learn, by doing.
I love that. Leroy, Dunisani, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Great having the two of you.
Thank you very much, Connor. It was a pleasure being here.